This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Welcome to this episode of Forge Daily. I am your host, Mackenzie Barwell, checking in July 15th, 2024. Yesterday, Forge FC walking away with 3 points against Pacific. Kwasi Poku now with 6 goals on the season, and Forge bumped up to 3rd in the CPL standings. I should mention, though, that the stats and results of this game may not be the most exciting thing about it. Yesterday, head coach of the men's national team, Jesse Marsch, was in attendance after an amazing and lengthy run in Copa America. He returned from North Carolina yesterday and I guess made his way right to Tim Hortons Field because his first appearance to a CPL game was this Forge v Pacific match. So I thought, what better way to start today's episode than by sharing his words and playing that interview back.
Alongside Jesse Marsch, head coach of the men's national team. Thank you so much for being here. You're getting some applause. Now I've heard this is your first CPL game. What's your game day experience so far?
Yeah, it's been really fun. Enjoying the level of play, some good players on the pitch, and then there's some energy in the crowd, and hopefully in the second half where they can have a little bit more to cheer for with some goals.
Yeah. Now, this league prides itself on developing young players in Canada. What is the role like for the Canadian national team program with regard to the CPL?
Yeah, I think obviously the level's a good level, but getting younger players integrated, get more younger players on the pitch, advancing development of younger players in this country, I think will be really important for the future. So it was great to see Luc de Fougerolles start for us last night, an 18-year-old on the pitch, and I thought he played really well. So yeah, I need to see more academies. I need to be watching more of these games. I need to get my fingers into what's happening with the sport in this country. But I'm really excited, and I think the initial signs of how the team has performed are really positive.
Yeah, that sounds like a favorable response from the fans as well. Now, you've been called up to the national team program, been in that position for some time now. So, number one, has your start been like? And number two, how was this amazing run in Copa America for you?
Yeah, we had a lot of tough matches. We started with Holland and France. We need to get back here in Canada. That's what I feel like, so that our fans can have a chance to watch us play at home, to cheer on our team and our players. And what I can say is that Canadians should be really proud of the character in the team and the personalities and the young men and who they are. Like, I told them before the last match that coaching them has made me a better person, that they've taught me about what true selflessness is and what real togetherness is. And it's a team that Canada should be really proud of. So we're going to keep getting better. We're going to keep improving so that in 2026 we can put on a real show.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jesse. One more time, everyone. Round of applause. Head coach of the men's national team, Jesse Marsch. We appreciate you. Thank you. Enjoy the game.
Such a cool experience. It truly was a privilege having met him, and it was also just cool to hear his thoughts on the relationship between the Canadian Premier League and the national team program. So I have a feeling that won't be the last time that we see Jesse Marsch in the building. Now, let's move on to my conversation with the CPL's Mitchell Tierney. For today's episode, he and I talked all about yesterday's matchup against Pacific and the current temperature of the league right now. All right, Mitch, thank you so much for joining me on the audio network. I think this is the first time that you and I have done this, which is kind of shocking given the amount of conversations we've had in the press box.
Yeah, I think it is. I was getting jealous how many times Charlie was getting invited on here, but he's under the weather today, so finally I get the invite. I don't know if that's related, but yeah. Also, don't know if it's related that he's under the weather the day after the Copa and Euro final, but we'll leave that. We'll leave that on the side. A little suspicious.
Conversation for another time, maybe. Charlie coincidentally doesn't feel great today. That's funny. Well, no, thank you again. I know you had to do some rearranging for me to get that unreal backdrop. We've got books, we've got cleats, we've got a soccer ball. Dude, it kind of looks like the corner of Bobby's office when we do Behind the Beard, all that like big shelf, just like random soccer
Amazing.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Now, you were at the game yesterday, so that's, of course, why I wanted to have the conversation with you. Forge FC and Pacific. Forge able to take away 3 points from that one. These two teams were coming off the semifinal of the Canadian Championship, at least leg one. So we knew going into this that it would make for an interesting match because both of them kind of in a tough position having such a quick turnaround time. So final whistle blows. What were your just initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it was somewhat similar to the last match Forge played in the league against Vancouver FC, where they give away that early goal, and then it's them trying to fight back to get into the game. This time they do it, obviously through two Kwasi Poku goals in the second half, and I think another issue for them has been giving away late goals, and there wasn't really it didn't come very close for that being the case again. So like you said, two sides that were maybe a little tired in this one, and we saw that at times. Pacific certainly at the disadvantage. I mean, Forge has at least been at home for three straight, so they've been playing a lot, but they haven't been maybe flying across the country like Pacific has to go
Yes.
back
Yes.
home to Ontario and then yeah, returning to Ontario. So that I think played out, and they really tried to play more defensive. But yeah, credit to Forge for it's never easy to break down a team that plays that far back, and Forge were able to do it.
Yeah, no, it was funny hearing some of the commentary in the press box about the frustrating lower block, and we weren't even on the field,
Yeah,
right? But you're
exactly.
right. It is different for Forge having such a long stretch at home. And I want to go back to the beginning of this match and work through in chronological order here, because one of the things you said at the beginning of the game stood out to me, and that was the fact that every single Forge attack, at least in the first, I think, half an hour when we were sitting up there, was in the wings. And that was surprising in the sense that, of course, this is their style of play, but a lot of Pacific's really strong players are in those alleyways. So, from your perspective and having watched these two teams match up so many times, you said you've noticed Forge do this particularly against Pacific, though. Why do you think it is they choose that strategy in situations like these ones?
Yeah, something Bobby said before the game is the fact that Pacific play on such a narrow pitch, so they're maybe not used to that little bit more width that you get at Tim Hortons Field. So Forge tend to try and use those wide areas, and they really did in this game. Particularly David Chouanier down the right became a bit of an outlet, and then they're really good at when they find an area that they feel like is a weakness in an opponent, they just keep going there and keep going there.
Yeah,
Like
just yeah,
it's not like
totally.
they don't disguise it or anything. Like they are like, we're going here. But they can also do it in different ways. I mean, in the second half, you see Chouanier come more centrally, and then Borges goes over to that side and kind of takes the space. And they have Garv, who's playing as the right back in this game, flanking the two of them. So if there's a loose ball, it comes back to him, and he can quickly, pass it to one of the two of them. We see that on the first goal, where Garvin plays it down the line, and Chouanier is tucked in, so Borges
Yep.
is open on the far side in that pocket. So yeah, that's what Forge do, and they really they tailor it to different opponents, but they have so many of these systems in place that they know which one of them might work against the team. And again, they kept going there. I think it was almost half their attacks were down that right side.
Oh, is that what the stat was?
Yeah, I think it's 46.8
Jeez,
if I remember
okay, he's got the decimal.
correctly.
Jeez, something like that, right?
Yeah, well, if
Oh
I
yeah,
throw out a number, no one's gonna fact check that one. So
yeah, sure. We'll take your word for it, Mitch. Okay, let's get to that though, because of course Borges chips the ball in from the outside, the first goal that you talk about, and Kwasi able to, I don't even want to say tap it in because it was so well placed, and Bobby talked about that in the press conference
Mhm.
that it was a lot more impressive maybe than it might look at first glance. And then I think it wasn't until the 84th minute when Forge was able to take that 2-1 lead. Kwasi again, a confident strike off a loose ball after a corner kick. I think Daniel Parra able to get it over to him. But on the broadcast, Adam Jenkins rightfully said something along the lines of, once a new striker, now one of the best in the league. Crazy that we've come to this position now, but what I want to know, Mitch, were your initial thoughts when Kwasi was put into that striker position against CF Montreal, and I guess now him having 6 goals on the season?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. Like we've seen him over his career play a bunch of different roles. I think he played either as a striker or a false nine against Halifax a couple of years ago in a random game and scored in that one. So it wasn't like completely out of the blue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's a player who has like so many attributes that would make him work in different positions. Or you probably see training more than I do, but apparently he's been one of the best, finishers in front of goal in training for years. But He has the speed, and one of the things I really like about that has translated super well is he almost never loses the ball. Like if he gets the ball in that attacking situations, he can hold it up. He has like an 80% passing rate or something, which is normal for a defender, but for a striker, you're usually in the mid 60s because most of your passes are with 4 defenders around you. But
Right, under pressure.
exactly,
100%.
yes.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's able to do that works really well with a Forge team that loves to keep the ball. So yeah, it's been incredibly impressive how quickly he's adapted to this new position, and it's not just scoring the goals; it's making a lot of those runs that the best strikers make so quickly. And yeah, just how quickly he's been able to do that is very impressive.
No kidding. Well, it's interesting hearing your perspective, having gone back a couple years in the CPL and remembering, yeah, this one game against Halifax, I think he scored and he was in the, because, he is, I think, a naturally offensive player. So
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to hear you, have those tangible examples, though, looking back. Something we talked about off the record just a couple minutes ago was the fact that Jesse Marsch, I made that sound way too suspicious. Jesse Marsch, head coach of the men's national team, was at this game yesterday. And I want to continue the conversation about Kwasi because he puts 2 away and has a phenomenal performance. And with the 2026 World Cup around the corner, what do you think that game will do for him, especially with people in the audience like that?
I think that makes it more impressive from Kwasi because, he obviously had to have known that Jesse Marsch was there. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you yourself talked to him at halftime, so I don't know whether they heard that or not. But I mean, he was around. He was very visible at the stadium. So for a 21-year-old player who has to at least kind of know he's starting to get in those discussions, like that's a lot of pressure on a player.
Right.
But he obviously scores a fantastic goal, and then what I liked is he after that missed a few chances. Like he had the one where he scored, but it was offside. He was offside a few other times, and he had the header saved by Gazdov, but he just kept going and gets that second goal. So yeah, impressive to show that mentality that it doesn't really matter who's watching him. Like under the spotlight, he's still able to get these goals, and we see that again in the Canadian Championship. He scored in 2 of Forge's biggest games this year. So clearly a player who can show up for the occasion.
Yeah, 100%. And you'd think that, a vetted striker eventually has that mentality where you miss a couple shots or they're saved or there are those frustrating moments that they can build that relationship with themselves and that belief that eventually one will go in. So for Kwasi to kind of get to that spot right away, and to be fair, he does credit a lot of that to his teammates, as he said in the press conference, having their reassurance is definitely helpful. But yeah, to come to that spot as soon as he has with Jesse Marsch casually in the stands, impressive. As we said before, both of these teams competing in the semifinal of the CanChamps, one not coming away with the result they wanted, Pacific losing 1-0 to Vancouver. However, Forge coming off another monumental win against an MLS opponent. So you've seen this in prior years, of course, working for the CPL as long as you have. So from your experience, how much confidence or how much of a shift in momentum does it give to teams in this league in regular season matches coming off of games like that one?
I think it can actually be tough, and we've seen that for Forge earlier in the year. Obviously, talking to Bobby pregame, he quickly mentioned that there are very different circumstances in that rain-delayed CF Montreal game that they played before they went to Ottawa and lost 3-0 to Atletico Ottawa in that game. But it can be tough, emotionally and mentally, kind of coming off of those games. But Forge have really, over the past couple weeks, they've really labeled themselves as a big club. That's what they want to be known as. Obviously, they have all the silverware, they have all of this, playing in a big game. They don't want to be seen as the underdogs. They want to be seen as a team who deserves to be where they're at. Big clubs win the small games. Like they win those games that, not to necessarily call this a small game, but they don't always, like, you get to those bigger games by winning so many of the regular season games and that sort of thing. So to have the consistency and to again step off such a big emotional moment and then to do the business again at the weekend is really big. And I think a progression from this team where maybe in past years they've been able to do that, but I think last year a little bit the consistency wasn't there, especially at home, in terms of yeah, they'd have some big performances in big games, but then they'd turn around the next week and look tired or not be able to get the job done. And yeah, so that's a big statement from Forge to be able to pick up a result after such a big win over Toronto
Right.
FC.
Absolutely, Mitch. And that's a really great point, because in talking to the players about similar sentiments, saying everybody's in a good mood, the morale in the locker room is great coming off such a big win. As much as there is that confidence, having secured that result in a separate competition, their focus was the next regular season game. So it was a matter of kind of flipping the switch, if you will, so there's only so much, I guess, confidence can do in that respect when you are physically and emotionally exhausted or drained from a game just a couple days prior. I want to look ahead actually to this weekend, Cavalry, because Forge now bumped up to third place, Pacific down to fifth, I believe, in the standings, which of course is that last playoff spot, and Cavalry not quite there yet. So have you been surprised at the season that they've had thus far? Of course, they're not necessarily recording a ton of losses, but there have been a lot of ties. And given what we saw from them in 2023, I don't think many people would have predicted this for them.
Yeah, no, certainly not. I mean, I think we just talked about the consistency of Forge. Calgary is one of I think the two teams in the league who haven't won back-to-back games yet this year, Valor being the other one. So for a team who did that, I think 9 times last year, if you look at some of them were back even at the end of the year. I think they won 5 straight. So they were a team who really went on some really impressive runs last year. Like, they've had good games. Obviously, they beat Forge 1-0. They've had some other really big wins against, some of the better teams in the Canadian Premier League, but then they seem to always follow those up with a loss or a tie or some other demoralizing result. So, yeah, they're a group right now that as well. I mean, they've been missing Ali Musi, they're missing William Akio, they've been missing Bradley Camden, Charlie Trafford, like a lot of these names that obviously, you would have seen on the field in the CPL final last year or were standouts for them at the award ceremonies. All of these different things haven't been healthy. And then that next group that I think we all thought were going to step in and if these guys weren't available, step up, haven't really been at that level so far this season. And that's obviously been disappointing for Tommy Wheeldon Jr. and his group, but that's a big reason why, they haven't been able to find that consistency, and they certainly haven't been anywhere close to the level of last year, especially offensively. Like, yeah, this is a team that last year led the CPL in goals, and they're barely scoring a goal per game at this point. Defensively, they've been good, but we saw it with Pacific this week. Like, when you can only score 1 goal in a game, you always open the gates for the other team to get back into it. And
yes,
we've seen that with Cavalry a lot this year too.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize. Well, you name all those players who are out right now, and that felt like the starting 11 of the CPL final in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, they were 13 points above the second place team in the standings for the regular season last year. So it's very weird to see them in that spot. But for Forge, this is an opportunity for them to gain some momentum, because as much as they have found some results and quote unquote have been playing good football, according to Coach Bobby and a lot of the players, they haven't really found a flow, especially within recent weeks and just the regular season. Of course, they've had great results in the CanChamps. So what do you think needs to be taken away from this last Pacific game to ensure they kind of capitalize on this form right now, and potentially vice versa for Cavalry?
Yeah, I think obviously the main thing for Forge in the last little bit has been defensive mistakes. We see that again in this game. I don't think Malik would have been happy with the way he gave away the penalty kick in the first half. But they're able to recover. They're able to limit it to just 1 and then go from there. So I think that's the big thing for Forge right now. I mean, they've been scoring for fun over the last little bit, but they haven't always been able to keep balls out of their own net. So anytime you go on the road, you don't want to let that home crowd get into it at all. And I mean, if you're Cavalry, this is another great opportunity for them. Obviously, you're Forge, you're going to get the best of every team because they all see this as a chance to make a statement both internally and externally. So it's going to be a tough game. Obviously, you're going to get yeah, again, like the best of this Cavalry team, and they're going to see this as a potential rallying point for their season at the halfway point to start it off with a home win against Forge, coming off their only home loss of the season. They're the last team to have a perfect record. Again, it was a lot of ties, but perfect record at home. Like, they'll want to recover from that because home's where they've done their best business since coming into the CPL. So yeah, they're going to need to get back to that if they want to get above that playoff line.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, halfway through the season, so I would imagine some teams are using this as a fresh start almost. Thank you so much, though. Seriously, this was very enjoyable. Now I've added you to my list of potential guests, so next time I see you in the press box, you may want to hide, or else I'm asking you to hop on the next day, probably.
Sounds good. I'll have to rearrange the basement again on,
exactly.
on short notice. But no, always happy to
get your
hop
move
on.
sorted out, get the studio laid out.
Exactly.
And then we're good to go. With that, I will conclude today's episode. A special thanks once again to Mitch Tierney for taking the time, and of course to Jesse Marsch for fitting in a halftime interview yesterday into his very busy schedule. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. You can expect another one with Coach Bobby tomorrow for Behind the Beard. But in the meantime, thanks so much for listening and enjoy the rest of your Monday.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.